According to the latest mortgage data from Intercontinental Exchange and the housing analytics firm Atom, the two most foreclosure-stricken cities in the entire United States right now are not in Ohio or Illinois or any of the old Rust Belt names you would expect. They are both in Florida. Foreclosure filings across the country have jumped 26% over the past year, to the highest level since 2020, and Florida sits right at the top of that list, leading the nation in foreclosure starts and posting the worst state foreclosure rate in the country as recently as last fall. But here is what almost every headline about this gets completely wrong. This is not 2008 coming back. Let me say that clearly and upfront, because it matters. Florida started roughly 10,000 foreclosures in the first quarter of this year, which sounds enormous until you learn that is about 16 times lower than the crisis levels of 2008. So this is not a meltdown. What this actually is quieter and, in its own way, far more revealing. It is an early warning. And the reason it is happening is not the thing almost anyone would guess. It is not the mortgage itself. The people falling behind did not overpay for a loan they never understood. In most cases, they could easily afford the house on the day they signed the papers. The real villain here is a bill that did not exist on closing day, a bill that ballooned afterward, and it is quietly pushing thousands of ordinary Florida homeowners past the point where they can catch up. Today, I'm going to show you the 10 Florida towns leading this surge, exactly what the latest numbers from Zillow and Redfin say about each one, and the single force sitting underneath all of it. Let us count them down. So what is this bill? It is the escrowshock. When you own a home with a mortgage, your monthly payment is not only principal and interest, it also carries your property taxes and your insurance, bundled into an escrow account, and your lender can raise that figure whenever those costs climb. And in Florida, they have climbed violently. The average home insurance premium in this state now runs around $7,136 a year for $300,000 of coverage, compared to roughly $2,543 nationally. That is nearly triple the national average. For condo owners, it is often worse because Senate Bill 4D, the reserve law passed after the Champlain Towers tragedy in Surfside, is now hitting older buildings with special assessments that in some cases run from $134,000 all the way to $400,000 per unit. A family that comfortably made its payment 2 years ago can open a single escrow statement and discover the monthly cost has jumped by hundreds, sometimes thousands of dollars, through no fault of their own. That is the spark. Then there is the fuel, and it has a name. A very large share of recent Florida buyers used Federal Housing Administration loans, the low-down payment mortgages that first-time and working families rely on to get in the door. Those government-backed loans are now going delinquent at a rate near 11.5%, and they make up around 55% of every seriously delinquent mortgage in the entire country. When you drop a sudden payment shock on top of a borrower who put very little down and has almost no cushion, ordinary delinquency turns into foreclosure quickly. And there is one last trap that seals it. The people getting caught are overwhelmingly the buyers of 2021 through 2024, the ones who bought at the very top of the market. Nearly 900,000 of the country's newest owners now owe more than their home is even worth, which means they cannot simply sell their way out of trouble. They are stuck between a payment they can no longer make and a home they cannot sell for enough to cover the loan. And Redfin data shows the typical Florida home now takes around 69 days to sell, with inventory the highest in years. So a family that falls behind can no longer count on selling quickly to escape the bill before the filing lands. So let us count down the 10 Florida towns where this trap is closing hardest. Number 10 is Miami, and Miami is where the condo side of this story is most brutal. The average home value in Miami sits high, well above the statewide figure, but that number hides the pain because the pressure here is concentrated in older condo buildings. This is ground zero for those Senate Bill 4D special assessments, the six-figure bills landing on people who thought their units were paid off. When an assessment that large arrives on a fixed-income retiree, there is no escrow account big enough to absorb it, and the unit goes from a home to a foreclosure filing in a matter of months. Miami produces some of the highest raw foreclosure volume in the state, and the condo market underneath it is where the escrow shock does its quietest, deepest damage. A retiree who paid off a Miami condo decades ago never imagined a single letter from the board could force them out. Yet across the city, that is exactly what is happening, one assessment at a time. Number 9 is Orlando, which lands inside the 20 worst foreclosure metros in the entire country. Orlando was built on 2021 and 2022 boom buyers, many of them younger, first-time owners using exactly the kind of low down payment government loans that are now going delinquent fastest. The typical Orlando home still sits near $390,000, but a large and rising share of listings are already cutting their price. And a first-time buyer who stretched to get in at the peak has no room at all when the insurance line on the escrow statement suddenly doubles. Orlando is the profile of this crisis in one city, a young buyer, a thin cushion, and a bill that grew after closing. Number 8 is Tampa, which not long ago recorded the highest foreclosure rate of any major metro in the country, roughly 1 in every 1,373 homes. Tampa Bay's problem is timing. So many families bought during the frenzy of 2020 through 2023 that a huge slice of the market now owes close to or more than what their home is worth. Selling is no longer the easy exit it was. And when the escrow shock hits a household that cannot sell without writing a check at the closing table, they hang on until they cannot, and then the filing comes. Tampa is proof this is not a small-town problem. It is reaching Florida's biggest, most celebrated markets. Redfin shows Tampa Bay homes sitting longer and cutting prices more often than a year ago. The market quietly confirming what the foreclosure filings already shout. Number 7 is Ocala, the fast-growing logistics town in the center of the state. According to Redfin, the median sale price here has already fallen more than 5% over the past year, to around $275,000, with homes now taking about 96 days to sell. Ocala grew explosively on warehouse jobs and low down payment buyers, the exact combination that is most fragile right now. When prices soften and the escrow bill climbs at the same time, the newest, thinnest, cushioned owners are the first to fall behind, and Ocala has more of those owners than almost anywhere. If you are finding this genuinely useful, and especially if your own town is on this list, do me a favor and tap the like button, because it truly helps push this warning in front of other Florida homeowners before they get blindsided by their own escrow statement. And the next few towns are where the numbers get the most serious. Number 6 is the Palm Bay and Melbourne area on the Space Coast. Home values across Brevard County have already eased over the past year, and this region leans heavily on younger, payment-sensitive buyers who financed with those same low-down payment loans. The Space Coast has a proud working middle class, but a working middle class is exactly who feels an escrow shock first, because there is no spare $1,000 a month hiding in the budget. When insurance and taxes climb together here, the gap between what a family budgeted and what the lender now demands opens fast. And that gap is where foreclosures are born. And because so many used low down payment loans, they had almost no equity to begin with. So even a modest dip in value leaves them nothing to sell into and no cushion to borrow against. Number 5 is Cape Coral, And this is one of the two towns that national analysts are specifically flagging as a trouble spot. According to Zillow, values here are down around 6% over the past year. And across Southwest Florida, more than 40% of active listings have already cut their price. But the real danger in Cape Coral is negative equity. So many people bought at the peak, and prices have fallen so far that a large share of recent buyers now owe more than their home is worth. Add the punishing waterfront insurance this area carries, where premiums can run many thousands of dollars, and you have the full trap. A payment that keeps rising, and a home they cannot sell for enough to escape. Cape Coral has both jaws of it. Redfin adds one more warning here. In a recent quarter, 43% of Cape Coral buyers were searching to leave, while barely 1% of buyers nationwide were searching to move in, which shows how thin the pool of rescue buyers has become. Number 4 is Northport, just up the coast, and it is the second town that analysts are naming outright as a negative equity trouble spot. Northport was one of the fastest growing cities in the entire country during the boom, which means an enormous concentration of its homeowners bought within the last few years at the top with thin down payments. Zillow now shows values here down close to 9% over the past year, among the steepest declines in the state. When a town's buyers are that new and that concentrated at the peak, and the escrow bill starts climbing, the fall does not spread out gently. It lands all at once on the same recent buyers in the same few years. Redfin has the typical Northport home selling after roughly 77 days now, at a median near $350,000 that keeps drifting lower, and in a town this new, a drifting price and a climbing escrow bill are a dangerous pair. Number 3 is Jacksonville, which ranks among the 20 worst foreclosure metros. If you have made it this far, you understand this better than most homeowners in the state. So stay with me, because the final 3 are not warnings about what could happen. They're the places where it is already the worst in the entire country. Number 3 is Jacksonville, which ranks among the 20 worst foreclosure metros in the entire nation, sitting around 11th place among the country's largest cities. Jacksonville built much of its growth on affordable, low-down payment lending, the very loans defaulting fastest right now, and the typical home here sits around $300,000. Its distress is quiet and broad rather than dramatic, spread across thousands of ordinary neighborhoods full of families who stretched to buy and are now watching an escrow statement they cannot control eat the room they never had. There is no dramatic headline, only the slow arithmetic of a payment that grows a little every year, until one renewal, it finally passes what the household can carry. Number 2 is Punta Gorda, and this is no longer a warning. It is a national headline. Punta Gorda now holds the second worst foreclosure rate of any city in the entire United States, roughly one filing for every 416 homes. This is also, by Zillow's data, the single fastest falling housing market in America, down close to 8% over the past year. The two records sit in the same town for a reason. This is the heart of the insurance crisis, a region hammered by storms where premiums went from manageable to crushing, and where the escrow shock has hit longer and harder than almost anywhere else. Punta Gorda is what the later stage of this looks like. It is the town where the spark and the fuel have burned the longest, and the foreclosure rate is simply the smoke finally visible from a distance. Before I reveal the number 1 town which holds the single worst foreclosure rate in the entire country, there is one resource worth knowing about if any of these towns hits close to where you live. I keep everything in one place, a single breakdown of 40 Florida towns, 20 that are genuinely worth buying into right now, and 20 worth staying well away from, each one with the specific reason attached, including the exact insurance and assessment risks we have just walked through. If you want to see which side of that line your own town falls on, The link is waiting in the description. But stay right here, because the #1 town is the worst in all of America, and right after it, I will show you the single pattern connecting all 10. And #1, the town with the single worst foreclosure rate in the entire country is Lakeland. Right in the middle of the Interstate 4 corridor between Tampa and Orlando, Lakeland now has roughly one home in foreclosure for every 409 housing units, the highest rate of any city in America. Lakeland was a boomtown growing fast on logistics jobs and first-time buyers using low down payment loans, and it caught every single part of this trap at once. The peak buyers, the thin cushions, the climbing insurance, the escrow shock. There is no single villain in Lakeland. There is the same villain as everywhere else on this list, simply concentrated more densely than anywhere else in the nation. That is what makes Lakeland #1. Not because it is uniquely doomed, but because every ingredient of this crisis overlaps here at once, in a place most of the country has never even heard of. So there they are. 10 Florida towns and one force running underneath every single one of them. Here is the pattern. Almost nobody on this list is in trouble because of the price they paid or the loan they signed. They are in trouble because of the bill that arrived after they signed. The escrow shock is the villain, the same one, in all 10 towns. Insurance that nearly tripled, property taxes that reset higher, condo assessments that landed like a second mortgage. Layer that onto a low down payment buyer who bought at the peak and now owes more than the home is worth, and you have manufactured a foreclosure out of a family that did everything right on the day they closed. That is the quiet engine turning Florida into the country's foreclosure leader, and it is not really about houses at all. It is about a monthly number that keeps moving after the ink is dry. And once you see it that way, the whole map of Florida foreclosures suddenly makes sense. It is not the poorest towns leading the list. It is the towns that combine the newest buyers, the thinnest down payments, and the sharpest insurance shock, all in the same few years. Concentration is the whole story. Now let me be completely straight with you, because your trust matters more than a scary story. This is not 2008, and I will not pretend it is. Florida's foreclosure numbers, as fast as they are rising, are still a small fraction of what the state saw during the real crisis, roughly 16 times below those levels. Most homeowners here are current, most will stay current, and a rising foreclosure rate off a very low base is not the same thing as a market falling apart. This is an early warning, not an ending. The point is not to panic. The point is to understand exactly which force is doing the damage, so that when you are deciding where to buy in Florida in 2026, you do not only ask what the house costs. You ask what the insurance costs. You ask whether the building has a looming assessment. You ask what the escrow bill will look like in 3 years, not just on closing day. Because the safest home in Florida right now is not the cheapest one. It is the one whose monthly number will not quietly grow into something you never agreed to. And if you already own in one of these 10 towns, do not read this as a reason to panic and sell into a soft market. Read it as a reason to open your own escrow statement tonight, to call your insurer, to ask your condo board the hard questions, and to get ahead of the number before the number gets ahead of you. Most of these homes are not lost. They are simply being tested. Now, I genuinely want to hear from you because the comments on these are always the sharpest part. Has your own insurance premium or your escrow payment jumped in the last 2 years? Drop the number below the before and the after, because someone scrolling right now is staring at the same statement and wondering if they are the only one. You are not. And if this video helped you understand what is actually driving this, please hit the like button and subscribe. because these numbers move every single month, and I would rather you hear the next warning from me than learn it from a notice taped to a neighbor's door, because that is exactly what is coming next. There is a second group of Florida towns where the foreclosure numbers still look calm today, but the escrow bills are already climbing underneath the surface. The insurance renewals, the new assessments, the quiet delinquencies that have not yet become filings. When those towns turn, they will turn quickly. So stay with this channel, and we will name the Florida towns where the next wave is forming before it ever reaches the headlines.